The first contraction hit her while the wind was still howling like a warning across the empty highway, and for a terrifying moment, Marla Vance thought she was going to lose everything, not just her home, not just her past, but the fragile life growing inside her. The sky above her had turned a cold, endless gray, and the world felt stripped bare, as if even hope had been taken from it. She stood on the side of the dirt road, one hand clutching her swollen belly, the other gripping a torn duffel bag that held the last pieces of her life. Her breath came in uneven bursts, not just from the pain but from the crushing reality that there was nowhere left to go. If you believe in second chances, in the idea that even at your lowest moment life can still surprise you, take a second right now to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Only Kindness, because stories like this remind us that hope can appear when we least expect it. Marla hadn't always been alone. There was a time when laughter filled her small home, when her two young children chased each other through narrow hallways, and when the man she trusted most stood beside her, promising forever. But forever had shattered faster than she ever imagined. The debts came first, then the arguments, and finally the silence. He left one night without warning, leaving behind nothing but unpaid bills in a hollow space where love used to live. The eviction notice came 2 weeks later. She remembered standing in the doorway as strangers carried her furniture out like it meant nothing, her children clinging to her legs, asking questions she couldn't answer. That day, something inside her broke, but she didn't have time to fall apart. She had mouths to feed, a baby on the way, and no safety net to catch her. For days, they drifted from one place to another. A friend's couch, a shelter that was too full, a night spent in a broken-down car that barely started the next morning. Her body ached constantly now, the weight of her pregnancy pressing down on her with every step, every breath. And yet, she kept moving. Because stopping meant giving up. That morning, when the car finally died on the side of the road miles from the nearest town, Marla knew she had reached the edge of everything. She helped her children out, trying to keep her voice steady, pretending this was just another stop, just another delay. But inside, fear was clawing at her. The road stretched endlessly in both directions, surrounded by trees that seemed too still, too silent. The wind carried a chill that seeped into her bones. She didn't know where she was going, only that she had to find somewhere safe before night fell. They walked for what felt like hours. Her children grew quiet, their small hands gripping hers tighter with every step. Marla forced herself forward, ignoring the pain that radiated through her back and legs. She couldn't stop, not now, and then, just as the sun began to break through the clouds, she saw it. At first, she thought it was a trick of the light, a shadow among the trees. But as they got closer, the shape became clearer. A small cabin, worn but standing, tucked away just off the path as if it had been forgotten by the world. Hope flickered in her chest, fragile but undeniable. The cabin wasn't much to look at. The wood was weathered, the windows dusty, and the door hung slightly crooked on its hinges. But to Marla, it looked like salvation. She hesitated at the steps, her heart pounding. What if someone lived there? What if they didn't want her? But another contraction hit, stronger this time, and she knew she didn't have a choice. She pushed the door open. Inside, the air was still and quiet, carrying the faint scent of old wood and something softer, something comforting. Dust danced in the light that filtered through the windows, and the room was sparsely furnished with a small table, a chair, and a narrow bed in the corner. It didn't look abandoned. It looked waiting. Marla stepped inside slowly, her children close behind her. She called out, her voice echoing slightly in the empty space. No answer came. The silence felt strange, but not threatening. Carefully, she guided her children to sit on the bed, brushing dust away with her sleeve. Her body trembled with exhaustion as she leaned against the wall, closing her eyes for just a moment. For the first time in days, she wasn't moving. For the first time in days, they were safe, at least for now. Hours passed. The storm outside never came, but the sky remained heavy, casting the world in a muted gray light. Marla explored the cabin cautiously, searching for anything useful. What she found made her stop in her tracks. In a small cupboard near the back, there were supplies, blankets neatly folded, canned food stacked carefully, even a first aid kit. Everything was organized, clean, as if someone had prepared this place not for themselves, but for whoever might need it. Her throat tightened. Who would do something like this? She felt something unfamiliar then, something she hadn't felt in a long time. Relief. That night, they stayed. She fed her children with the food she found, wrapping them in warm blankets as they drifted to sleep faster than she had seen in weeks. Watching them, her chest ached. not with fear this time, but with gratitude. But sleep didn't come easily to her. The pain in her body had grown stronger, more frequent. She knew what it meant. The baby was coming, sooner than she had expected. And she was alone. Fear crept back in, sharper than before. What if something went wrong? What if she couldn't do this? Tears filled her eyes as she sat on the edge of the bed, one hand resting on her belly. She whispered silent prayers, not even sure who she was praying to anymore. All she knew was that she needed help. Morning came too quickly. The light that streamed through the windows felt warmer now, softer, as if the world itself had shifted overnight. But the pain hadn't eased. It had intensified. Marla could barely stand now, her movements slow and careful. Her children watched her with wide, worried eyes, sensing that something was wrong. She tried to smile for them, tried to be strong, but inside, she was terrified. Another contraction hit, stealing her breath, forcing her to grip the edge of the table to stay upright. A cry escaped her lips before she could stop it. And then, a sound. At first, she thought she imagined it. But it came again, a faint noise outside, like footsteps crunching on gravel. Her heart leapt into her throat. Someone was there. The door creaked open slowly, and a figure stepped inside, silhouetted against the morning light. Marla froze. The woman who entered looked older, her face lined with years but her eyes sharp and kind. She carried a small basket in her hands, her movements calm, steady. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then the woman's gaze shifted to Marla's belly, and something in her expression softened instantly. She understood. Without hesitation, she moved forward, setting the basket down and gently guiding Marla toward the bed. Her hands were warm, reassuring, as if she had done this many times before. And in that moment, the fear that had consumed Marla for days began to loosen its grip. She wasn't alone anymore. The hours that followed blurred together in a haze of pain, effort, and quiet encouragement. The woman never left her side, her presence steady like an anchor in the storm. And when the baby finally came, filling the cabin with the first fragile cries of new life, something inside Marla broke open, but this time, it wasn't despair. It was something far stronger. Hope. The woman wrapped the baby carefully, placing him in Marla's arms with a gentle smile. Tears streamed down Marla's face as she looked at her child, so small, so perfect. She had almost lost everything. But here, in this forgotten cabin, she had found something she never expected. A miracle. Days passed, and slowly, Marla began to understand the truth about the cabin. The woman, whose name was Elowen, had built it years ago after losing her own family. Instead of letting grief consume her, she chose to turn her pain into something meaningful. She made the cabin a refuge, a place for the lost, a place for people like Marla. With Elowen's help, Marla began to rebuild. It wasn't easy. There were still challenges, still uncertainties. But she wasn't alone anymore. And that made all the difference. Weeks later, as the sun rose over the trees, casting golden light across the cabin, Marla stood outside with her children beside her and her newborn in her arms. For the first time in a long time, the future didn't feel like something to fear. It felt like something to fight for. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that even in the darkest moments there is still light waiting to be found, take a moment to like, comment, and share, because your support helps stories like this reach people who need them most. And before this story ends, tell us in the comments, do you believe miracles happen when we least expect them? Marla looked out at the horizon, her heart full in a way she couldn't explain. She had lost everything she thought mattered. But in the end, she found something far more important. A second chance. And sometimes, that's the greatest miracle of all.